Hi, this is Andrew Zebrun III. I'm here with Divide New York, and we're going to discuss the basics and what they're up to today. So let's take it away with Divide New York.
Hi, Andrew. I'm John Bergner. I'm the chair of Divide New York Caucus. We have Don Frank, who's a board member of Divide New York Caucus with us, and Rich Bitter, who's our Finger Lakes area leader. You wanted to hear more about the history of it?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the history goes back over 150 years, actually. There's been proposals for years to split the state into two states. Who's ever had more power at the time has been the one pushing. The one that had the lesser power was. For a lot of years, New York City pushed it. Then after the one man, one vote ruling, Upstate started pushing it. But it always gets blocked because Congress feeds back to them that they're not going to allow another state in the Northeast, at least not currently, because they feel New England has too many senators already, because their states are geographically small compared to the ones out west. So in analyzing that, we did a study. Basically, the study was, we looked into, could we support ourselves? And we discovered we could if we made three assumptions that the two college studies had not made. And we also looked into how we could split because we figured we'd never get it through Congress. So the easiest way to split is to create three fully autonomous regions, each with its own regional governor and its own regional legislature. There would be the New Amsterdam region, which is upstate, Montauk, which is the New York City suburbs, and the city of New York would be the New York region. The governor that remains under this proposal, which is a bill in both houses of the legislature, would only be token. He'd have a little bit more power than the Queen of England currently has, because the US Constitution requires we have a statewide administrator, but it does not require that we give him any power or her any power. So that's what we do. And to prevent governmental creep, you know how when there's a branch of government, it tends to grow and grow and grow. The state is limited to collecting pension payments from the municipalities and a 3% sales tax. So it can't impose an income tax, property tax, or any other type of tax. All those powers are transferred to the regions. So with a fixed income, it can't grow. It would have to stay small and token. There are a lot of provisions in there. The amendment is over 25 pages long because of what happened with Staten Island. I don't know, are you familiar with that at all?
No.
What happened with Staten Island was back in 95 or 96, 60% of the voters of Staten Island voted to leave New York City and form their own city. The vote was sent to the legislature to be ratified. It's still in committee. So basically, I don't think this year they even last 2 years, I don't think they've even bothered to reintroduce it to the committee. But when we did that, we looked it up and the amendment is 23 pages because it will be self-implementing. It requires no implementing legislation. If it's passed by the voters, it takes effect. The way it's passed by the voters, since we only have constitutional convention votes in this state every 20 years, and the next one is in 2037, I believe.
Yep.
So what happens then is we have to get the legislature to pass it twice with an election of legislators in between, and then it goes to the voters. Since the state is in a financial crisis now, there's possibilities that it can come out of the legislature, even if New York City controls it. Because what has happened is about 17 years ago, due to overregulation, the economy of Upstate started to tank. And it's been a long process. But what has happened now is New York City has to send money upstate to support Upstate based on the state constitution. Prior to 17 years ago, we sent money downstate. So it's reversed now. So they would save a small fortune by setting us free. And by releasing us from the regulations, we could support ourselves. Because what we'd have to do is we have two different things there. First, you pay income tax where you reside. And by adding 3 counties, Dutchess, Putnam, and Orange to the Upstate factor, that's where a lot of stockbrokers live that have very nice bonuses in December. Unfortunately, I don't get any of those. But that being the case, they would pay their income taxes upstate, probably at a lower rate than they do now. And we would have enough money to run the government if we based it on either the Pennsylvania model or the Vermont model, for example. Both of those states have a lot less money. The roads get paved, the schools run, the teachers get paid the same amounts that the teachers get paid here, and the same with the government workers. But they don't have a lot of the unfunded mandates that are bankrupting local government. I know in my own home county, Albany, the entire property tax and 2% of the 4% county sales tax just goes to unfunded state mandates. The county has to run on a 2% sales tax.
Yep. In my little county in Genesee, 81% of our property taxes go to unfunded mandates. And I know Erie County isn't far behind that.
The bill also has provisions. It explains how employees are transferred from the state to the regional employment, so nobody will lose their job over this. Property owned by a municipality is not taken by this amendment, so New York City will retain ownership of its water system. And the pension system for state and local workers remains at the state level unchanged. So we have worked out most of the details. We have the financial details on our website. We have all sorts of different details on how this would work on the website. What we're trying to do now is basically our state constitution doesn't have a right of petition for the people, but it does have a right of municipal home rule, which I thought was kind of interesting. Under municipal home rule, if a town, city, county, village, whatever, passes a home well resolution and transmits it by certified US mail to their assemblymen and state senators, those people are obligated to introduce it or co-sponsor it. They're not obligated to vote for it, but they are obligated to introduce it or co-sponsor it. In our research, we discovered something interesting. Most of the home rule resolutions in the past 50 years have actually been non-binding resolutions because they left out the last part where the clerk or the supervisor transmits it via US certified mail to the legislature. They only send it to the legislators that represent that town or city or village. They don't send it to the whole legislature.
Does the plan end up giving more control to the voters? Because I think that's something that they would be definitely interested in, don't you think?
Yes, each region has more control to its local thing. Most of the laws are deleted from the state code and automatically transferred to the various regions. So it works out great that way. There's only a small token number of laws that have to remain on the state level, and we leave them there. But it's so small, it's like dealing with Indian tribes, which I thought was kind of funny. Our state law and constitution was never upgraded to be the politically correct term. It still refers to them as Indian tribes. But which I thought was good. Well, they'll probably be fixing it eventually.
Yeah, there'll be a constitutional amendment to fix the language.
But basically, they have to be dealt with at the state level based on federal law. So they would still be dealing with it at the state level. But everything, for the most part, just about everything else can transfer to the regional level. And for 6 weeks a year, the regional legislators meet as the state legislature with their votes weighted by the population of their district to comply with the one man, one vote U.S. Supreme Court. So we don't have an extra set of legislators. They both just do double duty. But we figure 6 weeks is going to give them more than enough time because there's absolutely nothing, there's almost nothing they actually have to do at the state level once this passes. Everything will be done at the regional level. And bad laws can be repealed at the regional level if they don't work in a particular region.
That's a great feature.
Sort of like bail reform and the SAFE Act.
Yep. Definitely.
There's a smile from Rich.
You know, it sounds like this could get people interested in their government again.
Oh, yeah. You can bet
That's
they
the
would.
theory behind it. It brings it closer to the people.
Right. You can actually, the people that are making decisions for your region are likely to be right down the street from you. So you're not taking orders from someone that's 400 miles away. These are your neighbors that are going to be making these decisions.
Basically, yes. So that's basically how it works. And what we're trying to do is get towns and cities and counties to pass home rule resolutions that are binding, which means they have to transmit it to their legislators. We've gotten a couple passed so far, but I'm not sure if any of them have been transmitted yet.
Mine has.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Which town was that?
Bethany. I think that's the only one that has at this point.
You got anything to add, Rich?
Not thus far.
It's
Did you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing today. There's a big push going on nationally to get people involved in their government again, because with all the news around that really isn't real, and all of these crazy things going on with the schools, and you can't even speak in a school board. A lot of people are wondering what the heck is going on, and how did a switch flip and the world go so insane overnight?
right.
And they're desperate to figure it out. Don't you guys think?
I would suspect so, yes. There's a lot of problems with the schools. A lot of the school districts are close to bankruptcy at any given time because of unfunded mandates.
Yep, that's for certain. Interestingly enough, in New York State, I was reading an article here on the past week. They were talking about how much money New York State spends on education. And the poorest school district in New York State spends 20% more than the national average.
Wow.
So that's how bad it is. And yet you look at your cities in New York State, look at the cities and look at how poor the quality of the education is and how much money they're spending on those schools. And obviously, there's something seriously wrong here.
Yeah, they think money grows on trees, and they're just flushing it away, it sounds like.
Obviously, money isn't fixing the problem. It isn't a matter of money.
Yeah, one of the favorite memes going around today is two guys sitting in jail, and one says to the other, "What are you in for?" And the other guy says, "I spoke up at a school board meeting."
Yeah. And that would be a lot funnier if it wasn't true.
Definitely.
Yeah, that will probably end up with the costing the school board a lot of money. Or because they'll indemnify the school official that ordered the arrest, so they will probably have to pay a great deal of money to the people involved eventually, but that takes like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. Yep. And a whole lot of lawyers in the meantime are going to make a bunch of money.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's one of our problems today. The legal profession, they have this BAR in their name, and that seems to be an issue with foreign allegiance.
I don't know.
Can-
Hard to
can you-
understand.
I don't understand what you meant by foreign allegiance.
Well, the BAR is the British Accredited Registry, and any lawyer with that Esquire thing in their name has sworn their allegiance to the British Crown.
No, they haven't. Sorry, I'm an attorney.
Oh, well, I didn't mean to offend you, sir.
You didn't offend me, but that's not a truism. I'm sorry. I don't mean to start a debate, but that's not a truism.
Okay, well, that's the way I understood it. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
So how does it work then?
How does what work?
The BAR.
I have no idea what you're talking about, to be honest with you.
Are you talking about the bar?
Yeah.
The bar association is an individualized thing in each state or each municipality. That has nothing to do with anything about Great Britain or anything else. It's their individualized. I don't understand. Where what you're saying came from. And I'm an extremely well-educated person, and that's the first I've ever heard of that.
Well, if you have a pen and paper, I could give you a name to look up. The guy's name is David. His first name is David. And his last name is Straight. Just like Straight. STRAIGHT.
GHT, yep.
David Straight.
Okay.
If you look him up on YouTube, he has hours and hours of videos speaking about the law system. And that's where I learned about the BAR thing.
Well, that's, I'll be honest with you. I don't want to sidetrack us here, but that sounds like somebody's conspiracy theory.
Well, I didn't mean to sidetrack us either. Okay, so
Okay, well, I apologize, but that sounds like somebody's conspiracy theory. Never heard any such thing.
I apologize too. We can get back to the thing here.
Well, what's coming up this winter, hopefully we won't have a bad one because they only have half the plow drivers they used to have because they had a vaccine mandate for them and half of them quit, which is a major problem without that. Plus, we have major problems on just about every front with the state now. A lot of the regulations may work in New York City. I don't know if they do or not, but they don't work in less densely populated areas and they cost too much to implement, and we still have to implement them. So that's basically, we originally started this in 2015, the autonomous region plan. And the reason we started it was, as I said, the plan that had gone back 150 years was going nowhere. And at that time, it was due to lack of good jobs upstate because of overregulation. Since that time, a lot of major problems have occurred. We're entering a new phase of a crisis. The state was bailed out this fiscal year by the stimulus package, the municipal stimulus package that passed, I think, in May or April, something like that. But before that, we had a $15 billion deficit. Due to spending the stimulus, they're back to about a $15 billion deficit already for the next fiscal year. So if the Build Back Better bill does not pass, they will not be bailed out. And their other problem was 20% of the income tax revenue in New York State, approximately, give or take a percentage, came from 2,000 families. Unfortunately, I was never one of them.
Yeah. Nor was anybody else here.
But what has happened due to the pandemic is about 10% of those families have left the state.
Yep.
So they've lost 10% of their income tax revenue. So now they're at a catch-22. If they're not bailed out, they have to raise income taxes. And the only people that have money that could pay anymore are the remaining 10%. And if they do that, they may move out of state. So it's a catch-22 situation. Or they could divide the state into autonomous regions, and each of us would make out better. They could keep the money that they make in New York City region, the region, Long Island and the suburbs could keep its money, and Upstate could keep its money and get rid of the regulations so it would be able to support itself. Part of the amendment does have a clause that all unfunded mandates expire 1 year after the new regional governors take effect, unless reenacted by a 3/5 vote. So we're figuring most of them will just go away.
Right.
There are a few that make sense, and you should, like, they do have a mandate that if you have a municipal water system, you have to filter it and check it to make sure there's no contaminants in it. That makes sense to me. You need something like, I don't think anybody would object to something like that, but a lot of them make no sense at all. One of the most expensive ones is the school district election mandate. We have a board of elections that runs 2 elections a year, a primary and the general election, and an occasional special election. Rather than have them run school elections, school districts are required to run their own elections. A medium-sized school district, that costs them $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's just one mandate. The real problem on unfunded mandates is we cannot get a complete list of them. They're buried in every little law. Most of them are enforced because somebody remembers they're there. But there's probably some out there that aren't being enforced that they're in violation of. And most of them, other than major ones like the election or Medicaid, only cost the average homeowner maybe 50 cents or $1 on their property taxes. But the tax that there's over 6,000 or 7,000 of them add up really quickly. Some of them cost a few cents, some of them cost 50 cents, some cost $1. But there's anywhere, nobody is required to compile them or how much they cost.
They don't really know what you're being taxed for, ever.
Nope. Or where the money goes.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting when you listen to both sides. Basically, the New York City people, if you talk to anybody who lives there, they have a term for us. They welfare us. They know that they're sending money upstate, and they dearly do not want to do that. With all the trouble they have with their transportation systems and their infrastructure, they need money in the worst way, and they don't have it. They just don't have it. You know, we're pissing away money on every other thing, but not taking care of those infrastructure things that we should be. And, you know, those people there understand that, you know, part of the deal is that they're taking care of us. They've ruined our economy and they're taking care of us now. And you would think it would be easy to convince them to do this. But whatever the case, they keep electing people to the government that are basically, you know, they're dead set against it. And they do not want this to come to a vote. Literally, this could, what do you think, John? 18 months we could have this done? If we could get them.
If it was passed
Right.
in 2022 and then passed again in 2023, would go to the voters in the fall of 2023. The
Right.
key thing is, can we get it passed in 2022? That's why we're trying to get the home rule resolutions there. Because if enough municipalities pass their home rule resolution and enough counties do it, it will then become generally known. Most downstate legislatures don't even know the bills exist.
Right,
And most downstaters don't know the bills exist.
right.
If they discovered they existed, they would immediately probably become more supportive of them, because most of the rank and file, if it ever went to the voters, I think it would pass overwhelmingly, because most people in New York City want to get rid of us as much as we want to get rid of them. And it would probably help both of us. I have, as the chair, I have a balancing act that sometimes can drive you crazy, because our groups in New York City that support us have totally opposite views on most issues than the ones most upstaters have. So I have to stay officially neutral on things I care about, because both sides will win if we divide. But as it stands now, it's a toss.
That must be really difficult.
It is at times.
Let's just get this over with, okay? Let's get it
I
done.
would love to. I would
Yeah.
love to, but it's going to be, it's an uphill fight is what it is.
Right,
We're making more progress. We've got it in both houses of the legislature. It has more co-sponsors than it's had before. So it's slowly growing. I don't know if we're able to do it in 22. It could take effect in 23. If we flip over and only get it done in 23, we couldn't take effect till 25. That's just the way it goes. So we have to push on it. And the major issue is the lack of money, because all sorts of things are going to have to be cut in the city and upstate. And a lot depends if they actually pass that stock transfer tax. If they do that, I think that's New York City. Because the stock exchange president said he would reactivate the next day in Dallas, Texas, where their emergency system is.
I can tell you this much, if Trump would have won that last election, we'd already be in the process of this. Because no one would have bailed out New York City, and we would have been bankrupt, and that would be our best condition as far as getting this passed.
Right. Well, we're back to bankrupt again, so I don't know how they'll work their way out of it this time, unless they're
Right.
bailed out again.
Well, I'm sure that's what they're counting on, is the fact that Biden is going to bail them out again.
Might happen. No way of telling. But that's basically what it is about and what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve the lives of everyone. This would help New York City because they'd have money to repair their subway system. Because when I found out what was wrong with their subway system, I nearly died laughing. But it's not funny at all. Are you aware of that, Andrew, at all?
Oh, what is it? What's the problem?
Do you remember Hurricane Irene?
Yeah.
Well, that flooded the subway system with salt water. That to get around it and get the subways back running, they patched the shorts and they brought the subway up, but apparently they never cleaned the wiring. So the salt remained on the wiring and it's been eating it away. So now they constantly get more and more shorts. So they're at the point now, I don't know if you could still clean it and repair it. You'd probably have to rewire the whole subway system. And the problem with the way the subways work is we're one of 2 subway systems in the nation that still use a third rail power system, which was the 1890s for technology. Amtrak, where it has electric trains, uses the overhead power.
Yeah.
Even in New York City, they use the overhead power. And most other subway systems in the world use the overhead power because when you get a flood in the tunnel, the overhead power wires don't get wet. Unless you get such a severe flood, it floods the tunnel completely, which almost never happens. And the second thing that destroyed the subways, and apparently they're still not addressing it, is they used to have these rubber mats that cost maybe a couple bucks a piece. You ever seen the subway vents in the sidewalks in New York City?
I haven't personally. I haven't been there since I was 4.
Well, they have in the sidewalks, they have these little air vents that let air into the tunnel so people can breathe. When the train goes by, it pushes the air out, so there's not air pressure slowing the train down. Well, during heavy storms, they had these rubber mats that you throw on the vents so the rain wouldn't go in there and flood out the tunnel. Apparently, they don't have them anymore.
Oh, no.
Well, they were
So-
probably stolen.
Yes.
That could be it too, but they could have replaced them. It's not like you see, what's destroying the subway system is not high tech.
Just elements.
It's just lack of maintenance. That's basically what it is. Lack of maintenance. And it's stupid lack of maintenance. It could be easily fixed. But without those things, that's what's happening. In New York City's subways are controlled by the governor of New York, because the governor of New York controls the MTA under our current setup. Under our current setup, the Speaker of the Assembly controls the school system, not the governor, which I was shocked to find out, because the Speaker of the Assembly controls the election of the Board of Regents and they appoint the Education Commissioner. And the governor has almost no say over the education department. The only thing the governor has say over the education department is the health department decides what health rules apply to schools. Other than because the education department doesn't have jurisdiction to do that over its own schools.
Wow.
But that's basically, we have a lot of problems in New York State, and we're running out of money. So this problem would address a great deal of them and would allow us to get back out. And probably within a few years, all 3 regions would be running better. And most people in all 3 of them would be happy. Another part of the amendment that we cover is Metro North Railroad and Long Island Railroad would stay under the state because that would cross regional boundaries. So we figured that had to stay under the state because otherwise the regions might fight over how much to spend on the railroads.
What about the thruway?
Thruway gets divided at the regional lines. It's in 2, it would be in the Montauk region and the New York region. The thruway currently ends at the New York City line. That's why I-87 has such weird exit numbers, if you've ever noticed.
Yep.
It starts, it's the, I forget what the name of the expressway is in New York City, but it starts at number 1 there. When it hits the city line, the next exit is number 1 of the thruway. And then when it hit exit 24, it turns off, 87 turns off the thruway and becomes the Northway, and the exit numbers start over at 1.
Yeah.
So I-87 in New York has 3 exit number 1s. I think it has 3 of everything up to 7 or 8.
Right. That's true.
Now with the
Yeah.
GPS, it goes by state, it gets confused sometimes if you try to find something via exit number on that road.
You'd think we'd be able to fix something as simple as that.
Well, it's a confusion factor.
Mhm. Does Divide New York do anything for the overall transportation system, the infrastructure like Don was talking about?
It allows the regions to do their own infrastructure, which would allow them to spend more on it.
Mhm.
And the money you spend would stay in the region. Because all of upstate down has snow problems, a little more in the west and north, of course, but the state highways would become regional highways and be owned by the region. The town and county highways would not be affected at all. They'd still be town and county highways or town highways, whatever. And also on prisons, New Amsterdam, which would be the name of the upstate region, would be allowed to own 2 prisons for males and 1 for females. And the remaining prisons, their ownership would be transferred either to the Montauk region or the New York region. And prisoners would serve their time in whichever prison is owned by where they committed their crime. Because most of the prisoners in the upstate prisons didn't commit their crimes in upstate. For group homes and that, what we do to help people that are in group homes or whatever, the disabled, is your home reason, wherever you were when you were placed in a group home, is the one that has to pay your maintenance in the group home for the rest of your life, instead of the state paying maintenance for the rest of your life. So that way, since most of the group homes are upstate, they wouldn't be burdening upstate, and you wouldn't displace any disabled person by moving them between homes or whatever. Most of the homes are actually privately owned, just contract.
Right. It's true.
Do you have any fundraisers or anything like that coming up? I saw one in my email about one in West Seneca on December 17th.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a Christmas party fundraiser in Western New York on the 17th. We don't have any other fundraisers scheduled yet. We're just coming out of the virus slowdown that really hurt us, as it hurt everybody else and everything else. We've basically been inactive for most of 2020 and a good portion of 2021. We started to come out of it over the summer, and we're starting to reorganize. Some of our leaders had moved out of state, so we had to find new leaders and the like. It was basically a rebuilding year this year. Next year, we've already got 2 meetings planned on our event page, and hopefully we'll have a few more shortly.
Great. I'm going to put all the links for Divide New York in with this video so people can find you and find all of your information and things that you want people to do.
Thank you. It's www.divideny.org. Divideny.org.
Great. Is there anything else you guys would like to talk about today then?
Well, all I can say is this.
Go
Go ahead, Rich.
Go ahead, Rich.
ahead.
Go ahead, Rich. You got the floor.
I guess you.
Look, all this minutia stuff sounds really interesting. The bottom line is New York City does not understand life upstate. Upstate does not understand the life of people in the city. And it's absurd for either one to be telling the other how to live, particularly people in the city. And this alludes to what John was speaking of earlier, where the money savings for upstate would come from. We're subject to a lot of regulations and mandates and DEC rules and everything else that have nothing to do with life upstate. They're based on life in Queens and Brooklyn. and they cost us money, they cost us time, they cost us energy. The real core issue is let the people control themselves who understand what their needs are, and not people who are so alien. And it cuts both ways. When I address groups upstate, some of these people have never been to the city. Like yourself, you haven't been to the city in whatever, decades. I don't want to
58
age you
years.
for you, but decades.
8 years.
And so, your concept of what's going on in, Williamsburg section of Brooklyn is non-existent. And it's absurd to think that you're going to tell those people what they need for their lives. And it's just as absurd for them to tell me what I'm going to need up here in a county of less than 18,000 on my farm, which is 15 miles outside the nearest village. They have no idea what I need. I have no idea what they need. And that's the core issue. Let us decide our lives for ourselves.
Right. To give you an example of how bad that is, last year during the pandemic, the legislature passed a farm bill. You might have heard something about that. It regulates farming. It has a lot to do with labor and, things like overtime being paid and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, the people who passed that bill, all the people that voted yes for that bill, not one of them has an active farm in their district. But they managed to pass that bill, and really it was being pushed by, by big labor and by the advocates for immigration advocates and whatnot. And it was done for a completely different reason than it should have been. But right now, the farms up here are starving because they can't get enough labor. They can't have their people working a regular 40-hour week and then pay them time and a half, on above 40 hours. They can't make any money. They can't exist. So those are the types of things that they're doing in the legislature that are killing upstate New York. One of the other things is fracking. Their decision to go all out on carbon emissions, no more fossil fuels. It's been disastrous for upstate New York. These are the things that we need to be able to make our own determinations. What we need to do. What we don't need is to cover our farm fields and whatnot with solar panels in order to supply enough energy, within the state to take care of their needs. We also don't need to be, accepting their, 100 tractor trailers worth of trash leaves that city every day. And a lot of it ends up in upstate landfills. We don't need that either. So there are a lot of grievances that go both ways. I mean, we are upstaters, and I think, we have some definite grievances, and I think this is the excellent way to address these grievances. We don't want to fight, we don't want to argue. Basically, we're talking about the world's biggest, messiest divorce. We'll take our assets, we'll take our debts, and we'll be on our way. No harm done. This plan allows that to happen. The fact that we maintain ourselves as a state and we have, we don't have to go to the federal government for permission to do this, means we can actually get it done. So that's my take on it.
Well, I think we've covered quite a bit here tonight. I'll give anybody else the last word if they want to speak up now.
I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, John, I think
All right.
that's something we need to focus on too, is trying to find some happiness in this madness, right?
Definitely.
Okay, this has been Divide New York tonight, and look for this video, and also I'm going to be writing some articles on it too. So thanks for watching, folks.
Okay,